The 2025 NHL Draft is a little more than a week away, and the Islanders are on the clock. They have a tough decision to make. We'll talk about what should go into that decision, that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey, and we have got a very busy show. The big question on everybody's mind: Schaefer or Misa? We're going to talk about what should go into that decision and how it should be made. Plus, we'll talk about the buyout window, which now is about to open, and why the Islanders probably won't be part of it. And we'll talk about another potential reason for the Islanders to think about trading for James Hagens. All that coming up on today's show. Schaefer or Misa? The NHL season is over. Congratulations to the Florida Panthers on their second straight Stanley Cup championship. The drought for Canada, still no cup winner since 1993 for a Canadian-based team. That continues. And for the Edmonton Oilers, 2 years in a row where they came this close and could not win a cup championship. Now we are officially in the hockey off season, and we are all of 8 days away from the NHL draft. So officially right now in the hockey world, the New York Islanders are on the clock. The top 2 prospects in this year's NHL draft: defenseman Matthew Schaefer, forward Michael Misa. And you look at the comments and the votes that we've had, it's pretty divided among Islander fans as to who they should take. And it will be interesting to see what Matthew Darche decides to do. All indicators, as of right now, looks like the Islanders are leaning toward Matthew Schaefer. But keep in mind this: general managers around the NHL and all sports really always think about saying things that will give opposing teams a certain message that may have ulterior motives. So, the Islanders could be saying, yeah, we want Matthew Schaefer because he's the best player and we have this need and blah, 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 blah. And yet they may be willing to trade that first overall pick. And by talking up Schaefer, maybe the Islanders would be trying to get a better price in a trade for the pick. I'm not saying that's what they're doing. I'm saying that general managers have been known to do things like that, and it makes sense for them to do things like that. Here is, however, the ultimate criteria for the New York Islanders when it comes to who you pick. What you don't do is just look at the New York Islanders lineup right now and say, you know what? Last year, we finished in the bottom of the league or close to the bottom of the league in goals scored. In fact, we were 27th out of 32 teams. Therefore, we need to take a forward because we need to have more offense. Therefore, we have to take Misa. I get it. There is a certain logic to it, but that's not the way the NHL draft typically works. Yes, every once in a while, you get that generational talent. A guy who is ready to step in right away and have an impact. Those players, though, in the NHL are few and far between. Let's face facts that for the New York Islanders, for example, the last time they had the first overall pick in the NHL draft was 2009. They ended up taking John Tavares. And Tavares, who got the exemption in juniors and who was considered, a great talent, scored 24 goals and 54 points in 82 games and was a minus 15 for the Islanders. And again, those are very good numbers for an 18 or 19-year-old NHL rookie. You're not going to draft either Schaefer or Misa and expect them to come in and be a star. This is not the NFL. This is not the NBA where you draft, your first round pick is expected to make an impact probably sooner rather than later in most cases. This is the NHL where you draft players knowing that it may very well take a few years before their impact is felt. And you don't just look at what the Islanders as a team need right now when you're trying to figure out who to draft. You actually have to look at the organization and where it stands. Like, where are your prospects? Do you have more prospects who are forwards or more prospects who are defensemen? And I'm talking about your highly regarded prospects. So right now, the closest thing the Islanders have to a highly regarded prospect is Cole Eiserman, who most people argue has the potential to be a first-line goal scorer. The Islanders do not have any defenseman in their system who would be considered a player who is ready to step in and be a top defense pair kind of a guy. That's not to say none of them could develop into that, but as of right now, not looking all that likely. There's nobody on the board right now who fits that description. And keep in mind that what you're trying to do in this particular instance is project what your team's needs are going to be in 2 to 3 years, because that's when the impact of the player that you select now will really start to be felt. Here's the case in point. Last year, you had Macklin Celebrini as the number 1 overall pick. He was considered a generational type talent. Out of the 32 players who were picked in the first round of last year's NHL draft, how many of them played more than 5 games in the NHL as rookies? If you said 2, you got that right. Macklin Celebrini and Artyom Levshinov. Levshunov only played 18 games. Only 3 other players even played 1 game in the NHL. Jet Luchenko had 4. Zane Parekh had 1 game played. And Ivan Demidov played in 2 games. That's it. 5 players in the entire first round even played a game. Only 1 player played more than 18 games in the NHL. That's the way it is in the NHL draft. Very few 18-year-olds make it this far and go right into the NHL. So you're not looking at the Islanders' current roster and saying, what do we need right now? No. You're looking at the Islanders and projecting in 2 or 3 or 4 years which player is going to have the biggest impact on our franchise. And I'm not saying I know who that is. Most NHL scouts are leaning toward Schaefer. But we do not know at this juncture what the Islanders are going to do, who Matthew Darche thinks fits into the team the best under the circumstances, and what direction the team is going to go in. But the key impact has to be the key factor, the deciding category is this: who impacts this team the most over the long run? Not who's going to step into the 2025-2026 Islanders and fill a hole in our roster. Number one, the Islanders have a lot of holes. And number two, very, very rare that a first-round pick plays as a rookie right away in the year they're drafted. And even more rare that they make a significant impact. Last year, 1 player made an impact, and that was the generational talent known as Macklin Celebrini. No player in this year's draft is considered a generational talent. And that's not to say that either Schaefer or Misa may not play in the NHL this year. It's just that you don't make the draft based on who's going to contribute the fastest and who's going to impact this year's team. And I am confident Matthew Darche will figure out, based on the long-term impact of both players, who he should pick. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. The buyout window is about to open in the NHL. Will the Islanders be involved? Well, looks like they won't be. We'll talk about that. Plus, another reason to think about adding James Hagens, and for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a goalie who filled in on the island when injury struck in the 2008-2009 season. All that and more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's just the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. That's wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. The buyout window opens around the NHL now that the Stanley Cup final is over. And that's, something that happens every year. It'll remain open until June 30th. It will open June 20th. So it's 48 hours after the playoffs end until 5 p.m. Eastern time on June 30th. And much to the surprise of many Islander fans, Matthew Darche has indicated he doesn't believe he's going to be active in the buyout window. It's not that the Islanders don't have candidates. They have 2 or 3 of them, possibly. But here's the thing about buyouts. Buyouts in the NHL should be a last resort. Why? Because you do inherit a dead cap hit. And right now, the 2 players who have been most mentioned as potential buyouts, both of whom were given questionable at best contracts by Lou Lamoriello, Pierre Engvall and Scott Mayfield, they both have 5 years left on their contracts, which means if you buy them out in the next 10 days, you will be paying them for 10 years not to play hockey for the New York Islanders. In the case of Pierre Engvall, it's $1 million a year for the next 10 years. In the case of Scott Mayfield, it's $1.116 million for the next 10 years. Again, you're better off, if you can, trading these players if you don't want them to continue on your roster. And I think Mayfield would have more of a market than Engvall. Right shot defensemen are difficult to come by, especially one who is reliable like Mayfield. His cap hit is not prohibitive. The problem is he has that no trade clause, A, and B, has 5 years left on his deal, and he's already on the wrong side of 30. Engvall, to me, is a smarter buyout candidate. I don't think there's much of a market for Pierre Engvall. There have been some rumors that maybe the Carolina Hurricanes would be interested, but what do you get with Pierre Engvall? The issue with Engvall is this. He has speed, he has size, but he doesn't play the way his coach wants him to play. So Pierre Engvall played 62 games for the Islanders this year, scored 8 goals and 15 points, and was a -7, plus minus. In those games, in all of those games that he played, 62 games, he had 47 hits. He is not a physical player. And again, nothing wrong with not being a physical player. Mike Bossy was not a physical hockey player. Okay? But if you're not a physical player, you should be providing other things to make up for it. Whether it's being a great passer, playing outstanding defense, scoring a lot of goals, as Mike Bossy did. Pierre Engvall has not done what Patrick Roy wants him to do. And that is not to play on the perimeter exclusively, to go to the net, to be more aggressive, to shoot the puck more, to get into those dirty areas and use his reach. You know, we said he has height. No, he's not physical, but that height and reach advantage can help him get pucks that are loose, even if he's not going to be throwing a lot of body checks. The fact that last year, Pierre Engvall ended up being like a ping pong ball between Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Roy, where Lamoriello wanted Engvall on the team. Roy, unless Engvall played a very specific way, did not have a need for Pierre Engvall. And yet, injuries and salary cap considerations kind of ended up, they kind of had to use Engvall. And the results, with the exception of maybe a 10-game stretch in the second half of the season, maybe an 8-game stretch, were not particularly good. So Engvall, to me, it makes more sense to buy him out. I think you could trade Mayfield if you don't want him, depending on, what happens with your restricted free agents. And again, if he's willing to waive his no trade clause. But no one's going to touch Engvall. He is essentially a bottom six non-physical forward who doesn't play the way that most coaches want those kind of players to play. And look, he's capable of more. We've seen it in spurts, but consistency is vital in hockey. The thing that separates a star player from a below average player is the below average player can make a beautiful move and score a beautiful goal, but it only happens once in a while. The star player can do it every other game. Going to give me 40 goals? Some of them spectacular? Great. The average player or the below average player, yeah, I'll give you 8 goals. 1 or 2 of them may be beautiful to watch, pretty plays, but doesn't do it very often. So, according to Matthew Darsh, the Islanders probably will not be involved in the buyouts. In the case of Mayfield, I get it. In the case of Engvall, I get it less. I would prefer if you could find a team willing to trade for Engvall. The $3 million a year cap hit, it's not great, but it's not, especially with the cap going up, it's far from prohibitive or obscene. But the 5 more years for both of these guys, but especially for Engvall, 5 more years of a guy who is a fringe roster player at this point, doesn't make sense to keep him. You can get a 4th line guy to do things similar to what Pierre Engvall does for $1 million a year, maybe less. Save cap space. Get a guy who will play the way Patrick Waugh wants him to play. We'll see, but Matthew Darsh indicating, at least earlier, he does not think he will be active in the buyout process. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. We'll talk about another reason the Islanders might want to acquire Long Island native James Hagens. We've got that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So you learn something every day. That's the old cliche. And today I learned something about James Hagens, something that I did not know up until recently. And here's what it is. Long Island native James Hagens played with Islanders' top prospect Cole Eiserman. They were both on the U.S. development team. And a couple of years back, Eiserman had 43 goals, and Hagens had an assist on 26 of them, 16 of those primary assists. In 2 years that they were together, Hagens assisted on more than half of Eiserman's goals. This indicates that they have chemistry together. They know each other. Eiserman basically indicating that it would probably be the dream right there if he would play with his friend James Hagens as professionals. To have guys who already have chemistry and talent together, who could, a player who might be able to help Cole Eiserman reach his full potential. It's a little more intriguing. So now you're starting to build more reasons why you could get Hagens. Number one, the Long Island kid grew up rooting for the Islanders. Great story. Not the reason necessarily that you want to draft someone, but nice. But the fact that he, is still considered a top 8 talent. I've seen him slipping in a lot of mock drafts from originally 1 a year ago, 3, 5, 7, now 8 in some mocks. But the fact that he has chemistry with your number 1 prospect as of right now, whoever they draft first overall is going to now be the number 1 prospect in this organization. But Cole Eiserman, probably going to be your number 1 goal-scoring prospect. He's more, well, maybe Misa would be if they take Misa. But again, the fact that they've played together, they're friends, they have chemistry, they could bring out the best in each other on the ice and maybe help each other with the adjustments that they're going to face moving up from college or junior or whatever to the NHL. Well, they're both in college now, to the NHL. It again, not a reason to make it a need, but an interesting little sidelight that gives you another reason to consider moving up or back into the first round to acquire Hagens. And look, I've heard so many different rumors, whether it's Danny Nelson and a second-round pick and maybe Alexander Romanov, or if it involves Dobson in a pick. There's a lot of rumors out there. Everydayers, you'll remember just yesterday, we talked about Boston and Utah being 2 teams that may be looking to trade their first-round pick, both of them in the top 7. Whether the Islanders will aggressively try to trade back into the first round to get Hagens remains to be seen, but it's going to be a wild ride between now and draft day, and we will have it all covered for you here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and we are going ahead a couple of days. Saturday will be the 44th birthday of former Islanders goalie Yann Denis, the native of La Fontaine, Quebec, 5'11", 180 pounds. 4 years at Brown University, made his NHL debut with the Canadiens in 05-06. Joined the Islanders in 08-09 when Rick DiPietro was injured and the Islanders were struggling with goalie depth. Played 31 games for the Islanders, was 10-17-3 with a .910 save percentage and a 2.86 goals against average. Later played for the Devils and the Oilers, but spent most of his career in the American Hockey League. Even played 1 season in the KHL. Played 55 career NHL games at .279 goals against average and a .908 save percentage. One of his better games as an Islander, February 21st, 2009, Islanders facing the Devils at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And in this game, it's Scott Clemenson in goal for the Devils. Yann Denis, obviously the goalie for the Islanders. And in this game, the Islanders get goals from Sean Bergenheim, John Sim, Kyle Oposo, and Bill Guerin. And they shut out the Devils by a score of 4-0. In this game, Yann Denis gets a shutout and makes 40 saves to earn the win. A 40-save shutout. Not easy to come by. It was one of 2 shutouts that Denis had as a member of the Islanders. Yann Denis, a goalie who stepped up when injuries hit and the Islanders needed him. And they had Denis and Joey McDonald as their goalies that year. He is our Islanders birthday of the day. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no off season, and we're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR vs NYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long. And it's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you anytime. We are back tomorrow. Everydayers, check us out. We will have the latest rumors and news as the buyout window opens. Maybe the Islanders surprise us and do make a move of some kind. We'll also have the latest draft and trade and free agency rumors as well. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.